it. I got Sid Sheinberg had found the book and sent me the book in 1982. He sent me the book the weekend E.T. was released.
He changed cinema forever. He gave us E.T., Jurassic Park, Saving Private Ryan. And yet, when you cross him, you're not just fired, you're forgotten. Steven Spielberg might be Hollywood's most beloved director, the smiling genius behind childhood favorites and Oscar-winning masterpieces. But behind the camera, he's something else entirely: cold, precise, and absolutely unforgiving. No screaming, no drama, just silence. And silence, in Spielberg's world, means you're done. Some of the biggest stars in Hollywood made one mistake, just one, and vanished from his world without a word. No second chances, no public statements, just erased like they were never there. These are the 6 actors Spielberg quietly cut out of his life forever, and the chilling reasons why. At one point, Megan Fox was unstoppable. She wasn't just a breakout star, she was the face of Transformers, a billion-dollar franchise that launched her into global fame almost overnight. But just as fast as she rose, she vanished. And it all came down to 9 words. In a 2009 interview, Megan was venting about her experience on set with director Michael Bay. Frustrated and unfiltered, she described him as being like Hitler during filming. On its own, the comment might have just sounded like another overdramatic Hollywood soundbite. But there was one problem. Steven Spielberg heard it. Most people don't realize this. Spielberg wasn't just watching Transformers from a distance. He was the executive producer, the silent powerhouse behind the scenes. And if there's one thing Spielberg doesn't tolerate, it's reckless comparisons, especially that one. According to Bay himself, Spielberg made the call. Literally. He picked up the phone and told Bay to fire her. Not pause production, not recast. Fire her. Immediately. And that's exactly what happened. Megan was scrubbed from the 3rd film without warning. No farewell. No explanation. Her character wasn't even mentioned again. It was like she'd never existed. Later, Fox tried to walk it back, saying her words were twisted by the media. But it didn't matter. With Spielberg, the damage was done the moment she crossed the line. He didn't issue a public statement. He didn't argue. He didn't need to. Her silence in the next film said everything. Spielberg is known for giving actors second chances, even rebuilding careers. But in this case, he didn't hesitate. He erased one of the biggest stars in the world, not out of anger, but principle. And Megan Fox was never invited back. When Spielberg chose Shia LaBeouf to co-star in Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, it wasn't just casting. It was a handoff, a signal that Shia could be Hollywood's next leading man. Coming off the Transformers boom, Shia was everywhere. And with Spielberg backing him, it looked like he'd be unstoppable. But then came the press tour. Just weeks after the film hit theaters, Shia flipped the script, literally. He told reporters he wasn't happy with his performance. Fair enough. But then he kept going. And going. He blamed the film's flaws on Spielberg's choices. He said the movie lacked guts. He hinted that Spielberg had lost his edge, calling the process too safe and too mechanical. To the public, it seemed like brutal honesty. But to Spielberg, it was personal. He didn't rage. He didn't respond. He just cut the cord. Behind the scenes, sources say Spielberg felt betrayed. Not because Shia criticized the film, but because he'd smiled through production, praised the team, and then turned the knife in public. Worse, Shia doubled down in later interviews. He called Spielberg's directing style uninspiring. He even implied that working under him was creatively suffocating. And just like that, the phone stopped ringing. No callbacks, no cameos, no voice work, nothing. Years later, Shia admitted he'd dropped the ball with Spielberg. He tried to make peace, but by then, Spielberg had already moved on. And in his world, once trust is broken, there's no rewinding the reel. LaBeouf wasn't just dropped. He was deleted. Before Batman, before American Psycho, before the Oscars, Christian Bale was just 13 years old. And Spielberg gave him a shot most actors only dream of. The lead role in Empire of the Sun, a massive World War II epic. And Bale didn't just show up, he took over. He reportedly memorized the entire script. Not just his lines, everyone's. He gave unsolicited feedback on other actors' performances. He asked Spielberg for retakes when he felt scenes lacked emotion. He even questioned blocking and camera angles. For most directors, that might be impressive. For Spielberg, it was a red flag. He runs his sets like a symphony, controlled, calculated, and smooth. Having a teenage actor with a laser focus and a habit of micromanaging was chaos creeping into the system. To be clear, Bale didn't misbehave. He wasn't rude. He was just too much. Too locked in, too intense, too hands-on. And Spielberg doesn't like being second-guessed, especially not by a kid. The final film was a critical success. Bale's performance was called raw, stunning, unbelievable for his age. But when the credits rolled, something else happened quietly. Spielberg walked away. No drama, no statements, no follow-up projects. Bale had impressed everyone, except the one man who gave him his break. And as Bale's career skyrocketed, Spielberg stayed silent. Not a single collaboration. Not even a conversation. With Spielberg, silence isn't absence. It's a message. It was a casting dream. James Bond playing Indiana Jones's father. Spielberg was thrilled. Sean Connery wasn't just a star, he was royalty. Their team-up in Indiana Jones and The Last Crusade was supposed to be historic. And on screen, it was. But off-screen, a slow-motion collision. From day one, Connery made it clear he wasn't just here to say lines. He wanted input, rewrites, wardrobe adjustments. He questioned dialogue, challenged motivations, and pushed back on Spielberg's vision for the character. And Spielberg, who runs a tight, orchestrated set, was constantly forced into negotiation mode. Connery wasn't disruptive in the usual sense. There were no tantrums or shouting matches, just persistent friction. Constant back and forth over lines, scenes, character beats, often right before the cameras rolled. It wasn't arrogance. Connery believed the role deserved more dignity, more depth. But to Spielberg, it felt like a power struggle. And while the studio leaned toward accommodating a star of Connery's stature, Spielberg never forgot how hard the collaboration really was. Yes, the film was a massive success. Audiences loved the father-son chemistry. Connery even stole scenes from Ford. But behind the camera, Spielberg had quietly made a decision. There would be no next time. When future Indiana Jones films came around, Connery's name was barely whispered. No cameos, no voice work. Even when the franchise practically begged for a flashback or tribute. Nothing. Spielberg stayed polite in interviews, praising Connery's legacy. But his casting choices said it all. One film, one legend, one quiet goodbye. On paper, Hook had it all. Robin Williams as Peter Pan, Dustin Hoffman as Captain Hook, and Julia Roberts, fresh off Pretty Woman, as Tinkerbell. It was supposed to be pure magic, but instead, it became Spielberg's most chaotic set in years. Just days before filming, Roberts' engagement to Kiefer Sutherland collapsed. She arrived on set emotionally wrecked. and everything spiraled from there. She isolated herself in her trailer, showed up late, clashed with co-stars, and worst of all, she repeatedly ignored direction. Spielberg, who's known for keeping production moving with clockwork precision, suddenly found himself navigating delays, tension, and a cloud of negativity hanging over one of his most ambitious projects. The crew gave her a nickname, Tinker Hell. At first, Spielberg tried to give her space. He didn't want to escalate things, but time is money. And Hook was burning both. Every delay, every missed cue, every off-camera breakdown slowed the machine. And Spielberg doesn't tolerate long-term instability, not when it starts affecting the entire crew. The final film made money, and Roberts' performance held up on screen. But the experience had already crossed a line. Years later, Spielberg was asked if he'd work with her again. His answer was swift and surgical. No. That kind of honesty, from one of Hollywood's most diplomatic voices, said everything. No public feud, no drama, just a door that slammed shut and never reopened. Even as Roberts' career exploded, Spielberg kept his distance. Because in his world, once the trust is broken, the spell is gone. If anyone seemed untouchable in Spielberg's world, it was RichardDreyfuss. He wasn't just an actor Spielberg worked with. He was the muse, Jaws, Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Together, they helped define a new era of Hollywood. Gritty, grounded, thrilling. The chemistry was undeniable. Spielberg once called Dreyfuss the perfect storm of charm and chaos. The unpredictability, that was part of the magic. Until it wasn't. On the set of Jaws, Dreyfuss was known for pushing boundaries. He clashed with co-stars, second-guessed Spielberg's direction, and fought for control over scenes. Back then, Spielberg was young, hungry, and still learning how to steer a blockbuster. He let it slide. Then came Close Encounters. Dreyfuss delivered again, and critics hailed it as career-defining. But behind the camera, the tension had only gotten worse. Dreyfuss was now rewriting lines, lobbying for character changes, and leaning harder into the role than the director wanted. Still, Spielberg tolerated it. Until Always in 1989. That film, a romantic drama, was supposed to mark a mature evolution for both of them. But the old issues came back with new weight. Dreyfuss was difficult, demanding, unpredictable. And this time, Spielberg didn't just weather the storm, he walked away from it. No announcements, no final straw, just silence. After Always, Spielberg never cast Dreyfuss again. Not in a cameo, not as a voice, not even in a crowd shot. And what made it eerie wasn't the break. It was how quiet it was. No bad blood, no public digs. Dreyfuss even praised Spielberg in later interviews. But it was the kind of praise that feels distant, fond, but final. Because when Spielberg stops calling, it's not a pause. It's an ending. Steven Spielberg built some of the most beloved stories of our time. Tales of wonder, courage, and second chances. But behind the scenes, his rules are very different. He doesn't scream. He doesn't retaliate. He doesn't put careers on blast. He just disappears you. For Megan Fox, it was a single sentence. For Shia, a press tour betrayal. For Bale, too much intensity. For Connery, creative conflict. For Roberts, emotional chaos. For Dreyfuss, it was death by 1,000 challenges. And through it all, Spielberg never raged or retaliated. He just stepped back and never returned. That's the code. Respect the process. Trust the vision. Deliver when it counts. Do that, and Spielberg might build your legacy. Break it, and he won't just cut you out of the picture. He'll erase the negative, like you were never there. Because in Spielberg's world, You only get one shot. No retakes.